Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, bodybuilder, back with another episode on Swole Radio. Today, I have the great honor of being joined by John Meadows himself. He's a world-renowned bodybuilder and coach. I'm sure I don't need to introduce him. You guys all know who he is. But quickly, he has 18 bodybuilding show wins and has been training, competing since the age of 13. And he's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really hoping we can get into some of your wisdom, John, over today's episode. Thanks for coming on.
You betcha, man. My pleasure.
Yeah, so as you guys might know, if you've been following John on YouTube, there's been quite a bit of action going on recently as he had what sounds like a heart attack. I'm really glad that you're here and doing well with us. When I first saw that, I just had this, it was just this sinking feeling, seeing that video title and just jumping on and clicking and thinking to myself that, there's so much more knowledge that we need to hear from you. So really glad that you're doing well.
Yeah, I had a sinking feeling when it was happening too.
Can imagine. Yeah, so I just want to touch base in terms of that. What's going on from the medical side at this point?
So I was a STEMI, and
wow.
They took me in, and they took me straight into the cath unit, and I got the little scar on my wrist now where they did the cath, and he said I had a blood clot blocking my left descending artery, right, the big boy, was 100% blocked, and then one of the branches of that was blocked. So long story short, he put me on an IV of heparin, which it took about I went in on a Monday like at 2 or 3 o'clock, and then was in severe pain. And then Tuesday night, probably about 7 or 8 o'clock, I noticed the pain was much better. It wasn't as bad. So Wednesday, I went back into the cath unit, and they did the same thing. And he said, well, good news. The large blockage is gone. It's dissolved. And the smaller one is still there, but we think that'll dissolve too eventually with the heparin. So that was on a Tuesday night. So Wednesday, I felt pretty good. I was in ICU on Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I was put in the step-down unit. And then Thursday morning, they took in, I got a transesophageal electrocardiogram. So they all that stuff. So they looked at my heart, and they said, well, it's normal size. You have very little, if any, plaque. You got like a tiny bit on your aorta, which is normal for somebody your age. We just, we don't really see anything unusual. In fact, your heart looks really good. So now it's just a matter of trying to get my ejection fraction back, get function back, which is going to take some time. I was put on kind of the standard medicines, a calcium channel blocker, beta blocker, ACE inhibitor. We've already dropped the calcium channel blocker. Today is actually 30 days since it happened. And I do get a little bit low blood pressure from the medications. I feel like it's probably too much, but I'm going to listen to the cardiologist. I said I would listen, so I'm going to listen. But my blood pressure, like this morning, was like 105 over 73 or something like that. So I get a little bit lightheaded, but since I dropped the calcium channel blocker, I feel a million times better. I think once we get rid of the beta blocker, I'll pretty much be back to normal. Mm-hmm. They've, it was a blood clot, and they didn't really give me a good reason on why it happened, or everybody wants to know why. I don't know. I mean, if I knew, I'd tell you, because I would like to help save some people, but I don't really know. And I'm going to get some special blood work done that looks for arterial issues, thrombosis type issues. So I'm trying to think what they're called.
Yeah, like they're doing is it a hypercoagulable workup? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had it done on my veins before, because 2005, I had a blood clot too in my colon, and the sigmoid part of my colon. So they did the factor five lane and all that stuff. So I did that whole workup, but that was more on veins. So now they're going to do one on arteries. So there's what a loop. There's I mean, there's a lupus one, and there's a moofer or mother. Or, I'd have to look at the list, but there's like 5 of them. So we
Hmm.
still got to do that. But I'm kind of back in business now. I've been training for 2 weeks now. I'm going easy. I'm not going hard.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel pretty good. So life is good.
Yeah, yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, from the sounds, but that was a like a really bad um, clot you had, so it's
Yeah,
really
it
good
was
that you
it
got
was
in
bad.
early. Yeah, like people
You
die from
know,
that.
I don't know if you see this or not, but when this all happened to me, I was thinking I called the ambulance probably about, I would say, 15 minutes after I knew something really bad was wrong. They probably took another 10, 15 minutes to get there. Then to get me to the hospital was probably 30 minutes. So I probably got there in about 60 minutes. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about guys in particular, because we're stubborn. I was thinking about
Hmm.
how many guys in my situation would have just said, I'm just going to rest. I'm just going to sleep it off. And then they die, which is what would have happened to me, I'm pretty sure, based on the pain I was in, the fact that breathing was getting really, really challenging. I just think, man, I bet you there's a lot of guys out there that probably could have survived if they just would have, when something felt off, would have called for help. And I knew something was wrong, and I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, if I go in the hospital and they tell me nothing's wrong, then I'm no loss for me. But if something really bad is happening, it could save me. So that's kind of what my thought process was. And sure enough, when they got there, they hooked the EKG up and everything. And I asked the guy, "What's going on?" He said, "You're having a heart attack." So I was like, "All right, well, okay. So let's see what happens."
Yeah, yeah, no, it was really good that you called right away. And I mean, from the other side of things, I was just on ICU, and I mean, we see a lot of our patients would be the ones who actually like died, and I mean, and then they achieve return of circulation with CPR at the scene, and but I mean, they all comes with that are much 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 worse. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah, so yeah, I would definitely encourage people to err on the safe side. If people are having some sort of unusual pain, not just sitting on things.
yeah, yeah. Mine came on strong too, man. It felt like I had a bruised sternum, like right in my sternum. I was like, man, this hurts. And then maybe 2 minutes later, I noticed I was having a hard time breathing, and that's like, okay, something's wrong here. So, but yeah, I mean, I feel good now. I feel like I got real good care taken of me, and I probably should have been on blood thinners probably since 2005, really, when I had the other problem. But it's hindsight, right? So everybody's got other theories about on the internet, and everybody thinks they've got this all figured out. I've got 50 people telling me to change my diet, and I'm like, I've always been very careful with my diet, and you missed the part about me talking about not having any plaque. I actually 2 or 3 years ago actually had a calcium score test done. Like I try to stay ahead of this stuff, and I think that's part of what's so frustrating is I put so much effort into being healthy and try to do the right things, and then something like this happens, and it's just like, man, what am I even doing? I might as well just go to McDonald's and live there like everybody else does, and they live until they're 90. So that's probably not a good attitude to have. So I'm not gonna take that attitude.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes we don't know really what happened, and I mean, from the sounds of it, if considering the rest of your calcium burden and that is okay, I don't think it would necessarily be something that you've been doing wrong.
Yeah. So we'll see, man. But onward and upward.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, switching gears, moving over to sort of the training world of things. I just wanted to maybe have you start off and giving us a little whirlwind tour of your training career and sort of the different styles of training you went through.
Well, I'm 48 years old now. I started when I was 13, and when I started, we pretty much the only thing we had was magazines, and there were a few books out on bodybuilding, but it was mostly magazines. And the main one we had was Muscle and Fitness. There were other magazines, but that was kind of the main one that we used. And I was, basically what I would do was I would open up Muscle and Fitness and I would see, what's Lee Haney doing for his back, what's Tom Platz doing for his legs, what's Sergio Oliva doing for his arms, and I would just do what the magazine said. So, and then I would go to the kinesiology section and I would look at all the origins and insertions of the muscles and okay, what does this work and what does this work? And I was kind of obsessed with that kinesiology section. I remember when I was 14, 15 years old, I knew all the muscles in the hamstring, semitendinosus, membranosus, bicipitis, all that stuff. Like I was obsessed with that stuff, all the nerve innervations, everything. So I had this deep desire to learn muscle function, and I didn't really understand how to put programs together at that age. Obviously, I just wanted to just train hard. What I did have is I had a pretty crazy work ethic. I was I'll give you an example. Like in junior high school, I would never take my study halls. I would always get a pass to go to the gym, and I would literally run around the gym
Nice.
and because I was a wrestler and I was in football and I was in track. Or I would get a pass to go to the little teeny weight room we had with all the Nautilus equipment, and I would work out. So I was very, very, I was just born with this desire to work really hard. And, there was only one other kid in school that was like that. So he would join me sometimes. He wasn't as crazy as I was, but I worked really, really hard. And, I basically trained just from stuff that was in the magazines for many, many years. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I was probably 16, 17 years old. I went to my first seminar. It was a Tom Platz seminar. And I was in the front row of the seminar. It was the grand opening for World Gym East, which became eventually my gym I would go to. But I remember he was talking about Golgi tendon organs and sarcoplasmic reticulum, all this stuff. And I was like, man, this guy's really smart. He was very well educated. So I was just very hungry to learn physiology as well and all this stuff. So I really was focused on educating myself as much as I could. And even in junior high school, senior high school. And when I got to college, I remember I took anatomy, physiology, physiology of exercise, and kinesiology, and something else. I remember I took it all the same semester, and they were like, "No, that's crazy. You're going to fail. That's too much." And those classes were a breeze for me. Like they were a breeze. I didn't even study for kinesiology. It was so easy. But I just really loved that stuff. So I was training really hard with not a lot of direction, and I ended up starting to train at that World Gym, and I had some people kind of take me in, and kind of mentor me. And they were back then, these guys were powerlifters and bodybuilders. Like there was a large population that did both competitively. There was certainly some bodybuilders and some just powerlifters, but there were a lot of guys in that gym that did both. And so these guys took me under their wing and they really impressed the basics upon me. I had never done a deadlift actually in my life until I trained at that gym. And I was at that point, I was probably 21 years old. So I had never even done a deadlift. The gym I grew up in was a tiny gym. Like we had two benches, a dumbbell rack, a lat pull down, a cable pulley system, and I don't know that we had much more than that. And I was winning men's bodybuilding shows training in that little gym.
Oh yeah.
And then I would sometimes train at the school I went to too at college. They had a little bit better weight room, wasn't that much better, but so I had a very like limited repertoire of the stuff I did, but it worked because I was working hard. But anyway, so these guys got me deadlifting. They got me. I was already a really good squatter, but when I was in high school, I squatted 500 pounds natural. So I was obsessed with Tom Platz. Like I wanted to look like him. So I was pounding my legs. Like the only guys that would train me at the gym would be the older guys because anybody younger didn't want any part of my leg workouts. I was going really hard. I mean, I was in high school, leg pressing 1,000 pounds, and my upper body was really weak, but my legs are really strong.
Yeah.
So anyways, I started training with this powerlifting style, and and I started noticing some, like, I was having injuries that weren't real serious, but I could tell they could be serious. I started, for example, I was benching first in my workouts, doing barbell bench presses, and I started getting pulls all the time. And then I had some where I actually got black and blue. I was like, man, I think I'm really close to a pec tear. I started having some problems with my elbows. I remember my elbows were hurting so bad because when I was squatting, I was a high bar squatter, right here, and I had a very vertical back spine, and when I was powerlifting, they were moving the bar down my back. I was doing more what you would see a powerlifter would squat, but it was torquing my elbows, right? So I don't know if it was my ulnar collateral ligaments. I don't know what ligaments it was, but my elbows were fried. They were in really bad pain. So, at the time I was still in my early 20s, and I thought I got to make some changes to my training, or I'm not even gonna make it to 30 years old. I'm gonna have tears all over. So I started thinking about exercise sequence, and I don't think people even now put any kind of thought into it, and I think it really does a disservice to their training. I started noticing that there's a health perspective. So if you do a bench press second, for example, instead of first, you're going to be much more warmed up. Assuming you're doing a good exercise that you feel well first, you're probably going to target your pecs a lot better in the second exercise. I just noticed that I started changing kind of the sequence of what I was doing. It's like, man, my joints feel better now. I'm not getting hurt, and man, I'm growing better. Like, I think I'm actually targeting the muscle better instead of placing so much stress on connective tissue. So I started incorporating some things that originally I did out of more of a longevity perspective, but I actually started growing more, and it was pretty cool. So I didn't really understand volume or fatigue or any of that stuff. It was just go all out, smash yourself. And then when you're ready to smash it again, smash it again. And I know a lot of people like to laugh at that. And I do. I kind of like to laugh out of myself. But I'll say this. I don't regret that one bit, because I put in the work. And was I overdoing it sometimes? Absolutely. But I put in the work, and I made really good progress. And you can get away with that when you're younger, and I was eating a lot of calories. I'm not going to say my diet was really good, but in terms of calories, it was pretty good. I don't know about nutrient density, but when you're eating cherry pies and bags of potato chips to get your calories, it's good calorie wise, but maybe not nutrient wise. But so I had this base of my foundational philosophy, which is freaking go in there and light it up, tear it up. And it served me well, and then I got a little bit older, and it's like, okay, well, my recovery is not quite what it used to be. I had a period of time where I stopped growing, and I had to really reevaluate my training. I had to think about it. I went for many, many years and didn't grow a lick. So I reached to what I thought might have been my genetic potential. And I was pretty disappointed because I was only in my 30s, and I was like, man, this is the best. This is as good as I'm going to get. It was pretty disappointing. So I sat down and I just said, my training is not working anymore. I've got to really honestly take a look at my training and evaluate what I'm doing, because it's not working. I'm maintaining fine, but I'm not getting any better. So I looked at the different aspects of training. I looked at intensity. Am I training hard enough? Am I doing enough hard sets? Absolutely. Not an issue there. Am I doing the right exercises, based on how well I'm feeling the exercises? Probably doing the right exercises. And I was never married to any exercises. I was always able to, if something didn't feel like it was working, kick it out, put another exercise in that I liked better. I didn't necessarily think that was the issue. And then I started thinking about frequency. It's like, well, you've been training basically a body part. I was doing the bro split, legs on Saturday, chest on Monday, back on Tuesday. That's how I was training. And I saw that as the opportunity that I hadn't maximized. Like, I'm only stimulating the muscle once a week. That's only 4 times in a month. So I began to experiment with the training frequency. And initially it was, okay, whatever I'm doing on Monday for chest, I'm going to do it again on Thursday or Friday. And it didn't work. I couldn't handle that level of intensity twice a week on a body part. When you
Mm-hmm.
annihilate your legs on Saturday, they may not be ready to go again on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't work out well. So then I looked at the workouts itself. Okay, what do I need to do different? Well, maybe that second workout, maybe I can take out the barbell stuff that's causing a lot of connective tissue issues. Maybe I can go maybe a little bit lighter and focus more on higher rep sets, just something where there's less stress on my joints, what have you. So I began to do that on the second day. So in other words, let's say on Monday, I did my normal chest workout. Then on Thursday or Friday, it would be modified. There'd be no barbell pressing. The 6 to 10 rep range might become an 8 to 15 rep range. And boom, all of a sudden it started working and I could recover. I also changed my theories around intra-workout nutrition, which I'm very passionate about. And I started including intra-workout nutrition, which I think made a massive difference. And I mean, if I take out my intra-workout nutrition now, I get 10 times as sore as when I don't use it. So I revamped my intra-workout nutrition and I revamped my training strategy so that, my base workouts would be an exercise that I would start with to establish mind-muscle connection. We know now that it's real and it's very important. We've seen a lot of Brad Schoenfeld's work and many other people's work in that area that mind-muscle connection is actually good for activation. Once I had the right exercises for body parts, and then I could hit them with a compound movement safely, more of the heavier powerlifting type movements, trying to move weight, trying to get that actin-myosin, those bridges established so you have mechanical tension going to drive some growth. And then once I got the heavy stuff out of the way, then I would start incorporating more of like blood flow work. So like, maybe some supersets or maybe a drop set or something to just really engorge the muscle with blood. They call that metabolic training now. But for me, it was more about the pump and really trying to get the skin so that the cell swelling aspect to just really maximize that. And then the fourth exercise would always be something that created a really good stretch. So almost an extreme range of motion. Like if you're doing hamstrings, it would be like a stiff-legged deadlift. If you're doing chest, it'd be like a pec deck, something where you could really elongate your pecs. So that combination started working. I formalized it and it worked fantastic. And then what I would do, the second workout, is I would take out the compound stuff. So I'd still do the mind muscle exercise. I'd still do the pump work and I'd still do the stretch work. And I found that I was recovering awesome. And in a period of a year, I think I put on 8 pounds of muscle, which at that point for me was incredible, because for 5-6 years, I hadn't gained a lick. I hadn't gained a pound of muscle. So now all of a sudden I revamped my intra-workout nutrition. I revamped my training programs. And then, okay, I got the right system in place. Then it becomes, okay, now how exactly do you program the intensity into it? So I had to find that, which would work well for me. So how many sets are you going to do? How many of those sets are going to be to failure? What exercises are going to be to failure? Are you going to squat to failure? Probably not a good idea. That's probably a good way to get injured. But what about a leg extension? Can you do that to failure? Absolutely, you can. So it became picking the right exercises, for that phase in the workout. And then how many sets can you go really hard on and recover from? So, now all of a sudden, maybe instead of doing 5 drop sets in a workout, maybe I only do 2. Maybe I do 1 on the third exercise and 1 on the fourth exercise. So I started fine tuning all that stuff. Now it worked for me, but all this time I'm coaching hundreds and hundreds of people. So we're making, the baseline, the kind of the basic principles was working for just about everybody. We would fine tune a little bit in some cases. Okay, I want you to pull down a set or two. You can handle a little more volume, because at the end of the day, the principle of individuality rules. We're all a little different. But the actual fundamentals part of what I was doing was working really well. And that's really what got so many people doing my training programs. It was very structured, and they may not like all the exercises I like, but they understood the concept. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that exercise because I like this one. It works better, but I understand what he's trying to do, so I can simulate that. or I don't have this piece of equipment. Maybe I don't have a hack squat, so I can do this exercise instead.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's changed a lot over the years. And, there's a lot of considerations when you work with someone on how well they can recover, how much intensity can they take. Some people can handle a lot of intensity. Some people can't handle very much. Are they natural? Are they not natural? There's a lot of factors that play into that. But, it's my if I were to just do a 10,000-foot view, I'd say my training went from all out nuts, crazy, as hard as I can, to structuring it a little more intelligently so I don't kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting to hear. And I think a lot of us like science-based bodybuilder types like will sort of dismiss a lot of the old bodybuilder techniques. But my theory is that I think a lot of these things, like what you talk about with the exercise sequencing, and even incorporating more intensity techniques, things like the metabolite type work, is almost more so a way to fit in training in a way that is sustainable and just minimizes connective tissue stress. And I think that things change a lot as people become more advanced. And there's a big difference between squatting 2 plates versus squatting 5 plates. And I suspect that a lot of these things actually do hold merit and they just need to be applied, in the right context.
Yeah, I'm real good friends with Brad Schoenfeld, and we talk about this stuff all the time. And Scott Stevenson's another really good friend of mine. Scott actually helped me build. It was an ebook that covered the principles, the things we're talking about, and we had, I don't know, 250 some references on. Once we sat down and thought about it, okay, here's why I'm doing this. Are there references to support? Yeah, there's tons. And okay, now we do this. I think what I do is actually very scientifically driven. I just kind of backed into it. I didn't, first of all, the research back in the 90s wasn't as complete as it is now. But there's a couple sides of the scientific argument. There's, in some cases, the science it's not caught up, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, I never get mad at that. Some people are like, well, the science, they're not studying this or that. I'm like, well, how can you expect them to? How do you think, how easy is it for them to get 30 people who have trained for 15 years to follow a perfect, isocaloric diet where they all do the exact same drop set? I mean, that stuff's not easy to pull off. If you look at like I do a lot of training with athletes too, and you think about cluster training is a good example. So cluster training is, you're using a pretty heavy weight, but you're only doing perfect reps with it. You're not fatigued at all. Instead of doing like a set of 5, you might do, say, 9 singles, but you just rest in between the reps. So you keep doing these repetitive, perfect reps. And, I think, recently all of a sudden, well, maybe in the last 10, 20 years, everybody's talking about in the athletic community, oh man, this cluster training is awesome. I'm like, this cluster training goes back to the 60s and 50s. Like the Soviets were doing this. Well, this is not new stuff. The athletes figured this out, and the coaches figured this. Charlie Francis, one of the best sprinting coaches of all time, man, he was 30 years ahead of science, the things that he was doing. But what I'm really happy about nowadays is you got guys like Brad Schoenfeld, who actually is testing out a lot of this stuff, and Brad's fantastic. And so now you're seeing the scientific community, and then the meatheads like me, like we're coming together and like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. All these discussions on volume, I think are really good discussions. They're, all these different volume studies, and, I know Mike Israel's very involved in that too. But so I'm super happy with the scientific community right now. I think they're doing about as good of a job as they can. I mean, it would be nice if we just had unlimited funds and we could just set out these million different studies, but it's just not how it works. So yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction together. I think 10 years ago you would have a divide. You'd say meatheads would say, what's a guy in a white lab coat? What does he know about building muscle? And a guy in a white lab coat might say, well, he's just a meathead. He's just getting here because of luck. But I don't see that now. I don't see the divide. I think now people are coming together. They're working together. I do a lot of seminars with PhDs. And to be honest with you, a lot of us are saying the same thing. You know, there's more consistency with what we're saying than there are differences in what we're saying. I think all of us pretty much are thinking you need those really hard, intense sets. You just got to make sure you're doing the right amount of them. It's not 20 drop sets. It might be 2 in a day. I think we're all thinking, you know, volume wise, you know, well, as you progress from a beginner to an advanced stage, it's probably something like 10 to 20 sets a week for a body part. And then maybe on the upper end of that, some people can do 22, 24 sets a week, you know. I think we're all kind of starting to say and see the same things right now. So I think it's a pretty good time in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, actually. So yeah, I just wanted to ask, sort of touch on some of the training variables that I think will you'll be able to shed some light on just with all your experience. What's your view on the best metrics to gauge progress? Like, how do you usually monitor progress?
Well, it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to look good, the best tool is honestly the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if your goal is to get stronger, it's how much weight you're lifting. It depends on if you're trying to improve your health. Maybe it's your lipid panel. Maybe it's your C-reactive protein. You know, it can be a number of different things. So it depends on what your goal is.
Yeah. So say like we're focusing on hypertrophy, and let's say we're talking about natural lifters who, at a certain level, might be making progress. You know, might be making visual progress at a very slow rate. You know, but like, what do you use from week to week?
So first of all, I got a lot of love for the natural community, and a lot of my videos on YouTube, I'll point out the natural aspect of it. I trained natural for many, many, many years. And I think as a natural, there's some kind of misinformation out there. And I think the biggest problem that I see out there is anytime somebody does something hard, you'll see guys go, well, I'm natural. I can't do that. That's training too hard. That's bull. That's malarkey. You may not be able to do every set that hard, but think about this. I'm big on common sense. I'm big on logical thinking. Who grows easier? Somebody on gear or somebody who's natural? I mean, who grows easier? It's the guy on gear, right? Mm-hmm. They got a constant 24/7 ramped up protein synthesis. It's anti-catabolic. They got all these things going for them. So for you to be natural and think that you need to go easier it's complete nonsense. Like, no, you got to actually go really hard because it's harder for you to grow. You've just got to be smart about it. You've just got to have a measured approach. So what do I mean by that? So I think in the natural community, you know, let's take a look at several things. So first of all, you don't have 24/7 ramped up protein synthesis like somebody has when they're enhanced, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you look at the literature, basically it says 24 to 48 hours, sometimes a little bit more, is how long a muscle is, the protein synthesis is ramped up in that muscle. So if you train chest on Monday, waiting till the following Monday, it's probably not a good idea for a natural guy, you know? So you've got to build your training so that, you know, you've got a little more frequency. I'm a big believer in that for natural. So if you train on Monday, you need to be ready to do your chest again on Thursday or Friday. So you've got to build your training to allow you to do that. So what you have to do is you've got to set it up so that you're recovered, because I don't care what your split is. The number one thing when you train a muscle again is it needs to be recovered. If a muscle's not recovered, you're going to have a suboptimal session. You're going to have muscle fibers that aren't repaired, so you can't produce as much force. You're just not going to be able to train as well because you're going to be sore. You have to recover. If you keep training when you're sore, you eventually will hit a state of overtraining. So you have to be recovered. So now let's say you do 12 sets for chest, and then on Thursday or Friday, it still doesn't feel it's recovered. Okay, now maybe we need to do 8 sets for chest then. So maybe we need to pull back. Or maybe you do 4 sets to failure and your chest isn't recovered. So, okay, maybe we need to do 2 sets. So you need to look at your training parameters and adjust them so that you have an awesome workout and you're recovered for the next workout.
Mhm.
So, I think your question is a little bit more finer detailed. So how do you know you're doing it right? Well, of course you got progressive overload. We all know that. If you get stronger, chances are your muscle fibers going to get a little thicker. And hey, I'm 100% behind that. That's why I like that second phase that I was talking about earlier in that phased approach I use. That second phase, you take a basic exercise, but it doesn't need to be just that exercise. It can be any exercise. Like people think, well, my bench, squat, and my deadlift. Well, what about your dumbbell press for chest? If you do 90 pounds for 5 and then the next week you do it for 7, that's good. You made, you provided your form is equal, then that's good. So more reps, more weight, those things are all good. The trick is, and where people get stuck, is what do you do when you can't get stronger? Because every single one of us hit a phase where we just can't get any stronger.
Mhm.
And as a natural, you're probably going to hit that sooner than somebody who's enhanced. So, what do you do when you can't get any stronger? Your bench press is up to 380 pounds and it just won't get any stronger no matter what you do, because we all hit that. Can you continue to grow without getting stronger?
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying my conversation with John. If you want to see the rest of the interview, check out the full video on my channel, Ask Dr. Swole. The link will be in the description below. We'll see you there.